So, since we're skipping around in the gospel readings this semester, and since we're in Mark right now, I wanted to include a little detail that we only find in the gospel according to St. Mark. In the beginning of the Passion narrative, Judas has just betrayed Jesus with a kiss in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the soldiers arrest Jesus, and we're told, now a certain young man, having a linen cloth wrapped around his naked body, was following him. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth behind and ran away naked. The tradition is that this was Mark himself. The gospel writers don't always refer to themselves clearly. St. John says, the beloved disciple, the disciple Jesus loved. They refer to themselves in the third person. So the tradition is that this was Mark himself. But either way, the imagery is interesting in this moment of crisis where human nature is being revealed and we are lashing out against God himself and about to commit an act of deicide, the murder of God. We're revealed in our nakedness. You know, Adam and Eve in the garden were not ashamed of their nakedness until they fell. And then they recognized their lack of capacity to be what they ought to be, perhaps. At any rate, he runs away naked so that he doesn't get grabbed and arrested by the soldiers. The nakedness of human nature. But I think we see some of that in Acts as well, because in yesterday's reading, we heard that Felix, who was the governor of Caesarea, was intrigued by Paul's stories. Paul has been arrested. He's being held in Caesarea by the Romans, so the Jews don't kill him in Jerusalem. Felix is, he finds Paul's teachings fascinating. And yet there comes a point, as we read yesterday, that he pushes back and he doesn't want to hear any more. Now, today, Felix has been replaced by a new governor in Caesarea, Festus. Paul is still being held prisoner. The Jews want Paul to be brought to Jerusalem so they can kill him. Festus knows what they're up to because, of course, Paul was brought to Caesarea in the first place so that he wouldn't be killed by the Jews. But he's also playing politics. He's playing up to the Jews who have come to Caesarea and are accusing Paul. He's playing up to them. And he knows, and they all know, that Paul is not guilty of anything, but they just want him dead because they don't like the fact that he's preaching the way, the message of Christ. And so we see the nakedness of humanity in both cases. We see these two pagans or Gentile figures, these Romans, Felix and Festus, both in a sense going sort of halfway, trying to stand up for what's right, interested in what Paul's saying, but ultimately pushing back and ultimately sacrificing the truth to politics and convenience. And then Paul, of course, appeals to Rome. He says, I'm a Roman citizen. I will not have you send me back to Jerusalem. You know I'm innocent. If this is your decision, I'm going to appeal to the next higher authority, which is the emperor in Rome. I demand you send me to Rome. That's my right as a Roman citizen. So keep in mind that he has asserted that right. But you see, ultimately, even Paul is naked in his vulnerability because he will eventually go to Rome, and in Rome he will be martyred. We know that that's coming. So that even the rights that Paul asserts and claims, which are his, ultimately will be of no avail because we are, in our nakedness, frightened, miserable, scared children who treat each other contemptibly if we get the opportunity. And the only antidote to that is the grace that comes from Christ, which is the grace of love. So that's part of what you see when you read the Bible. It's part of what you see when you read history, even modern history or the news. You see people behaving the way we really are. underneath all of our clothing and pretense, our statuses, and our vain attempts to assert ourselves as being more than merely scared, naked, pitiful creatures. Sometimes I sound a little cynical, don't I? Well, this is a picture I took at St. Kevin's in Ireland. It's really a pretty cool picture. It's the cemetery at St. Kevin's Monastery. St. Kevin, pray for us.